Next presentation. This is called the Power of Disclosure in the Business World. My co-presenter, Coffey, was a board member of the NSA for several years and focused on stuttering advocacy at work. I would qualify him as a world expert on the subject matter. I'm going to take the first half of the time, and then Carl, because we're saving the best for last, and Carl will take the last half. So, the power of disclosure in the business world. That's got to be the craziest concept that you've ever heard, because when I first thought about it, it certainly was to me, especially when I went into the sales part of the business world. We all know that sales is based on confidence, right? I mean, it's based on confidence of the product or confidence of the service. Well, how in the world would I sound confident if I'm doing the things that people do when they're not confident, or even when they're lying? You know, I'm not giving my customer eye contact. I'm fumbling over my words. It's like I thought I would give the appearance that I didn't know what I was talking about. I found myself kind of standing on the edge of doing this new venture and going into sales. And what I found was that the enemy of stuttering in the business world, it's not the customer, not the owner. There's someone else. So back to me. I tried to hide my stuttering when I first took sales calls, because I wanted to appear confident. I wanted to appear like I knew what I was talking about and I knew the product. And we all know how exhausting hiding your stuttering can be. And I remember the exact sales call. It was the end of a week, and it was on a Friday night, you know, and I'm tired and I'm hungry. And those things just trigger stuttering. So I'm on my last sales call, I'm talking to these people, and all of a sudden I had one of those monster blocks. And one of those monster blocks that felt like I was, 8 years old again. And the people just looked at me, and I didn't know what else to do. I thought, well, I blew this sale, so I told them, look, I do this weird thing called stuttering. And I'm telling you, I remember the look in their eyes. It was weird because they were like, they started kind of smiling with their eyes, and, they were kind of at ease. And I didn't realize that if I didn't hide my greatest vulnerability, that if I didn't hide the fact that I stuttered to these people, the customer is going to realize that I'm not going to hide anything else. And so I made the sale. And so after that, I made sure on every sales call that I brought up stuttering at the onset of the sales call. Somehow I'd work it into the conversation. Number one, because it made me feel comfortable. Number two, it made them feel comfortable. And number three, it increased the chances that I'd get the sale. So I used it to my advantage. I worked for a company, and I was on the low end. So the owner of the company received a call from one of the suppliers, and the supplier said, we don't want Tom calling. I just got into construction management, hadn't got my confidence yet. And the owner of this supply house called the owner of the company and said, we don't want Tom calling anymore because everyone's complaining about him. It takes like 10 minutes for him to tell us he needs 10 pieces of pipe, so we don't want him calling anymore. And the owner of the company told him that if you can't deal with Tom, you're not going to deal with us. Because the owner of the company based his assessment of me on performance. I mean, so what if I took 10 minutes to make a phone call to a supplier? He didn't care because I was out there kicking the rear end every single day. He was making money on me. The owner of the company didn't care that the customers saw me stutter because he was getting letters of recommendations about me from the customers. So they were pleased. You know, I would go the extra mile to make sure that my customer got a good product. The enemy of stuttering in the business world is middle management. I've been through all layers of management in the business world. When I was lower management, it was that middle manager that was afraid that my stuttering was going to be somehow a bad reflection on them. You know, that their team wasn't up, that they didn't have the best team because he's got a guy that stutters. Middle managers worried what the customer will think because of my flaw, my stuttering. That's the enemy of stuttering in the business world, is that middle management. So you're stuck in that situation. What do? Talk to them. Talk to them about stuttering. Make sure that they understand every aspect of stuttering and that it does not affect your performance. And sadly, if you're in a situation where that doesn't help, make some type of a lateral move. Find a middle manager that does understand, doesn't hold stuttering against you. People have been in those situations and asked me for advice, and that's exactly what I told them. They're just worried what they look like. So my point is that stuttering can be a powerful weapon in the business world. Not necessarily weapon. I used the wrong term. It must be all the coffee. Cool. Ally. Stuttering can help you in the business world if you use it to your advantage. I think that disclosure, I have no doubt that is the thing to do, to openly talk about your stuttering. Let people know that it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal to you, and it will be a big deal to them. I definitely think that disclosure is the way to go. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to, as I said, we're saving the best for last. Carl Coffey. I've known this guy for a long time. He's truly a rock star, and I'm deeply honored to introduce my friend, Carl Coffey.
Thank you, Tom. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to take part in StutterFest. So great to see all the faces on the screen, a lot of familiar faces here. Don't know how I'm going to follow that, but I do have a story that I'll start with. I love to tell stories. So my career, I guess I'll kind of start how I started my career. I started in a sales type role. I was an admissions counselor for my alma mater, and I went to a really small private liberal arts college. So I was excited about this job, though. It was my first adult job out of college. I was excited, didn't know what the heck I was going to do, but I got a job and I looked forward to it. That first day is kind of when reality set in, and I realized, holy crap, I'm going to have to talk to people all day. I'm going to have to pick up the phone and call prospective families and try and sell them on a $35,000 a year education. I'm going to have to give campus tours. What in the world did I get myself into? That was what I thought. And full disclosure, I did not last long at that job. I had nights where I would just wake up in a panic and just think about all of the meetings I had the next day, the tours I would have to give, the fact that I'd have to call high schools to set up visits. And those thoughts and that anxiety, it paralyzed me. And I had so much fear. So I ended up actually stepping down from that role. And I resigned after maybe 6 months, what seemed to be the longest 6 months of my life. And I remember moving back home. And I thought to myself, what the heck am I going to do? I'm 22 years old. I have no idea what I'm going to do for a career. How am I going to make money? I'm going to live in my parents' basement forever. That was the paralyzing thought that I had. And so I remember the next couple months I was home and lived with my parents and was applying for jobs. And the next job that I got, funny enough, was at a call center. I would have never thought that that was the case. And it was kind of an awkward but funny twist of fate. But that job in that call center, I was actually a debt collector, to add insult to injury. So I'd have to call people on the phone and receive inbound calls about people, who were late on their credit card payments. And I loved it. It was one of my best jobs, one of my favorite jobs. And I think it was because I liked the team that I was in. I had a really supportive environment, which I think speaks to Tom's point, right? When you have really impactful leaders and folks who really invest in you and they see the benefit of you as an employee and your worth, that's always a huge plus. And I also, I had tools that I needed to succeed. I know Tom spoke about, using your stuttering as a tool. And I like to use the fact that, I stuttered. That was a way for me to better connect with people. I think that kind of let their guard down a little bit. But another tool that I used in that role was actually we had mirrors in our cubicles at work. And so before every phone call, our managers told us to smile before you dial. And I thought that was the cheesiest BS I'd ever heard in my life. But I actually used that mirror to actually physically see what I was doing when I was stuttering. And I don't think I'd ever had an introspective moment like that before. I'd always knew that I was a person who stuttered, but I never understood what was going on. What was my body doing? What was my mouth doing? I had no idea. It was like it was an outer body experience, me and my stuttering. And for the first time, was able to see in real time, what is happening? What tension do I carry? Where do I carry this tension? How does it manifest itself? And I think for me, just every phone call I would receive, I'd try and pick out another thing in my stuttering to say, why do I do that? Why do I make this face? Why do I close my eyes shut when I block? I just tried to, pick apart, not in a, bad or in a negative way, but just in a curiosity kind of way. And so that really helped me. So kind of the point of that story is to say, I really leaned into the fear that I felt with my stuttering. I thought, my next job was going to be doing something that was not customer facing, didn't have to speak a lot. And I actually kind of went in the deep end when it came to facing my fears and doing something really scary. And I think that can be such a huge benefit to us in just kind of, saying, hey, I stutter. That's okay. How am I going to be the most effective communicator that I can be? Because I will tell you, being in business for, the last 12 years, I've been on meetings, I've been on calls with people. There are a lot of fluent people who don't speak well at all. And they, just are not very articulate. And so, I used to think, oh my gosh, because I stutter, I'm not going to be well understood. I'm not going to be able to convey these points. And, I found that being a person who stutters, like a lot of us in this Zoom room, will find that we have a lot of grit. We over prepare. We are hard workers. And, we really are the ones who just get it done. And I think that, that is kind of separate from disclosure. But I think those are all, kind of attributes that we carry as people who stutter that we really should lean into and use to our advantage. So I've talked a lot about that. I'll just end with a couple of different benefits about using disclosure. I think that there are two benefits in my perspective. One for us as the person who stutters, and one for your audience. I think when you think about from the perspective of a person who stutters, right? We have the benefit of using disclosure to give us the permission to stutter. And I think that that is so important because a lot of times we try and run away from the stuttering, or we try and hide from it. But by disclosing and just saying, hey, I'm a person who stutters, I just want to let you guys know that. The act of doing that is so powerful, and it kind of frees you up from that feeling that you have to hide from it. And it actually allows you to stutter easier, which, takes a lot of the pressure off of you when you're speaking to a group of people, or you're presenting in a meeting, or you're trying to make a sales call. Just it frees up that pressure. And then from the perspective of the audience that you're talking to, disclosing your stutter, it names the elephant in the room for them. Because what I found is that using techniques and trying to, pass as fluent, I would always think that I was doing such a great job pretending to be fluent. And usually I was not doing as good of a job as I thought I was doing. And so by disclosing and doing that in a very matter-of-fact way, that's how I love to disclose. I don't like to apologize for being a person who stutters. I've done that, and it made me feel really weird and bad. So the way that I try and disclose is to be very frank and just kind of say, hey, put it out there. So for me, my disclosure, and I know that we're running short on time, but my disclosure that I typically do is I'll say something like, hey, my name is Carl. I'm a person who stutters. And so what that means is that you might hear me pause, or you might hear interruptions in my speech. If you need me to repeat anything, let me know. I'm happy to do that. By leaning into that and being positive about it, I show people that, hey, I am confident in myself. I am confident in what I have to tell you. And I'm not afraid to name this thing that is going on. And I feel like that makes your audience, that makes them comfortable with you. And that builds that trust very early on in the interaction and the relationship, what have you. And I find that that just makes the environment that you're in so much better, because you have that joint trust. You have that, ease of, hey, they know what's going on. I know what's going on. It lets you focus on your message. I think that is the biggest point that I want to make to you, is that when you disclose, you get to free yourself up from focusing on every aspect of your stutter. You get to focus on your message. You get to focus on connecting with your audience. And that's so important, whether you're giving a presentation, you're making a phone call, you're making a sales pitch, what have you. So I'm right at time. I don't want to take up too much time. I know there's a lot of other great things going on. So I just want to thank Tom for inviting me. And I just want to thank everyone else for being here as well.